My name is QC Miles. My rank was Staff Sergeant in U.S. Army Air Corps in World War II. I flew the L-5 in China, Burma, and India. An airplane flew over when I was in the first grade, and we all ran out and waved at it. And that was the first airplane I'd ever said. That was 1926. They made some really romantic airplane shows, like I Wanted Wings and Test Pilot. Every time I'd watch one of those movies, I'd just get eager. I graduated from high school in 1938. I was only 16 years old. We were farmers. We milked cows mostly. And my dad and I were milking cows out. It was a nice night. We were out at the corral. And he said, "How'd you like to go up to Northern tomorrow and go to college at Northern?" I said, "Well, Dad, you don't have any money and I don't have any money. How are you going to swing that?" He says, "Well, when you finish milking that cow, you go in the house and you take a bath and pack a suitcase." Now, I remember going into the house and saying, "Mom, I think Dad finally lost his mind." She said, "Why?" Then I told her what he said. She said, "No, we figured out a way you can take that one of your teacher's course." Well, I enlisted as an aviation cadet, and so I went through the regular aviation cadet training through pre-flight at Santa Ana and primary flight training where you flew the Stearmans in the primary and then BT-13s in basic. But towards the end of my training, just before I went to would have graduated, they didn't think I was flying instruments well enough to be a bomber pilot. So they transferred me to the flying the smaller planes. Then I was sent to Waco to fly L4s, L3s and L4s, and then to La Mesa to fly the L5s, and I graduated. I was listening to the radio, Sammy Kaye. I had a Sunday serenade program from 1 to 1:30 on Sunday afternoon. And I always listened to that. And right in the middle of the program, they interrupted the program to say that an unidentified aircraft had attacked Pearl Harbor. I had tried while I was to get into the Army Air Corps before Pearl Harbor, but you had to have a 4-year degree. So just as soon as they eliminated that 4-year requirement and said all you had to do was pass a 3-hour mental test and then the physical, I made application for enlistment right away. I went to Camp Phillips in Salina, Kansas with the 44th Division to get them ready for combat. And then I got sent back home for overseas, and then I got sent overseas in early in about May of 1944. We left, we were processed in Miami, Florida, in those expensive hotels there along the ocean. And then we flew by air. And we didn't know where we were going until half hour after we took off from the airfield in Miami. It opened up, and we were praying that we would get sent to Europe. But when we read we were on our way to Karachi, India, we would have liked to come back. But we flew C-47s from Miami all the way to Natal, Brazil. We landed in Puerto Rico, Trinidad, Georgetown, British Guiana, Belém, Brazil, and then Natal, Brazil. Then in a converted B-24, it converted to passenger service. We left Natal and landed on the Ascension Island, and then from the Ascension Island we flew to Accra on the Gold Coast of West Africa, then across Africa to Nigeria, El Janana, El Fasher, Khartoum, Aden, Arabia, Mansour Island, and Karachi, India. And then we were processed there now with sent to China, and from there we landed in New Delhi and Agra and Upper Assam, and then into Karachi. I had a number 3 priority, and I got to do some amazing things on the trip overseas, because like when we were at Natal, we got to go out to the ocean every day. You'd report at 9 o'clock in the morning to see if you were on a flight to go. And if you weren't on that flight, you got to spend the rest of the day doing anything you wanted. And I had a number 3 priority, so I didn't move as fast. The generals and the colonels had to choose the one. And then when I was in New Delhi, India, I got to see a world champion soccer game. And then when I was in Agra, I got to see the Taj Mahal. And so that's a piece of cake. My first assignment was at Paoshan. Now, we had four pilots there at Paoshan, but we flew support for the Chinese Sixth Army. But we were dependent. There was no ground forces in China except support. And one of the air support we give, and artillery support. And our main assignment at Paoshan was supporting the artillery. Our support units operated the guns, but all of the rest, the infantry and everything else, was Chinese soldiers. I was all over China. First of all, I was up on the Salween campaign up in western China, and then after we opened the Burma Road, I got sent to South China, where Chennault started, recapturing those airfields: Posay, Nanning, Luzhou, Guilin. But when I landed at Kunming, we were supposed to have some in service before we got to combat. But 2 days after I got to Kunming, one of our pilots up at Paoshan had gotten shot down adjusting artillery. I went to combat the first week I landed in the combat zone. That baby carried me through a lot of perilous times. You use your radio for fighter control frequency to warn you if there's enemy aircraft or something, and then he's got his own radio that he contacts. And it only takes 3 shots. The first shot they'll miss. The artillery's will miss by quite a bit. The second shot will be a lot closer. The third shot, they'll hit that sucker. That's why when I had a chance to volunteer to go to a mission on to evacuate troops I volunteered immediately, because I hated that job. That's the worst job you could have in Air Corps. After we opened up the Burma Road, and then I was sent to the southern China. That's when we really started recapturing southern China, because we had the material to do it. I remember the day they opened up that Burma Road and went up there to see that first contingent coming in. It was at least 2 miles long, of trucks and weapons carriers and jeeps. And we started getting that material, and then we started the big push. The big battle of China was going red hot when the war ended. We were just from the time we opened up the Burma Road until the war ended in August, We recaptured the airfields at Baumel, Nanning, Luzhou, and we recaptured Guilin the day they dropped the atomic bomb. We had those suckers on the run, but we had the material to do it with. Most of our flying in South China, when we were captured to the airfield, before the Japanese would abandon an airfield, they'd blow it up and mine it. So the first thing, in fact, on the 4th of July of 1945, there was three of us pilots that landed in the Luzhou. They just captured the day before. We'd go in there with engineers, and they'd have mine detector equipment. And I had the lead plane. And you'd look for a place between two bomb craters, and then you'd land, and then stop as quick as you could, and then your engineer would get out with his and clear the mines. And then the other two would come in and land after it was safe. Well, when my engineer got off to clear the mines, where we had landed was 18 inches from a mine. If we'd have been 18 inches, I'd have been a firecracker on the 4th of July of 1940. You can see what would happen to this airplane if you landed on one of those mines. But then see then they'd rebuild the airfield. We had captured enough of the Burma Road and with equipment to, engineering equipment then to Kuyang, Sela, Lungling. We weren't ever supposed to load up more than 200 pounds. I've carried as many as 400 pounds. In fact, when I was hauling troops in Burma back, one day I was just about dark when I left to bring a load back to Michigan, and I knew I wouldn't be able. And I had two guys that wanted to come, and I said, well, flip a coin to see which is going. I could see they wanted to go so bad. Well, I said, well, you're not very big. Get in the back seat, so I put them both in there. But I almost bought the farm that day because towards the end of the airstrip, there was a tree, and my wheels hit the top of that tree, and I went like that, but I never did that again. I was a good pilot, but not the best soldier in the world. You're not supposed to get below 3,000 feet. But sometimes you do, if your observer is gung-ho. But it's a long 25, 30 minutes. Going from the L4 to the L5 is like dying and going straight to hell. That's a fantastic plane. I got 2 Air Medals, 2 Distinguished Flying Crosses, and the Bronze Star Medal. For me, personally, surviving the Depression was more difficult than surviving World War II. The anxiety that was created during the dust storms and everything, worrying about the bank going to sell out your farm for you. And at least in the service, you always knew where your next meal was coming from. The missions were difficult, but they were short in the L5. Like artillery adjusted missions only lasted a half hour. There's a difference in every single L5. That's why they tried to keep you in your own airplane. It's not a big difference, but I used to hate to fly somebody else's airplane. We didn't even have a gyroscopic compass in those planes. Just the magnetic compass, a needle ball airspeed. We lost 2 pilots that had to bail out because the maps that they had, that when they were flying from um, Lujo to Posey, and the maps was, they couldn't find Posey, and so they had, then there was no place that they could land, so we lost her, they had to bail out. And they were not accurate. That was one of the chief difficulties that we have, the accuracy of the maps that we used to, when we had to fly great distances. Rumors, you hear rumors all the time in the service. And one of the biggest rumors that there are is, we got a bomb that's going to end the war. That rumor persisted for 3 solid years. And the day they dropped that bomb, went to chow that night, and, hey, have you heard, Kitty? Have you heard they got a bomb that's going to end the world? They said, oh, yeah. I didn't believe that till 2 days after. Finally, I thought, maybe there is something to this. Maybe this bomb's a little different. They sent you home by points. And then you got, but you only got points for your combat medals. See, those other medals that I won, I didn't get any points for them. But I had more points than anybody in my squadron. That's why I got sent home first. There, after we got off the boat in New York, the Red Cross had some booths up there, and I got a glass of milk and a cookie. And then I was on my own. My commitment is to this airplane. Anything that you can do to promote that, because that plane deserves. It never ever got any credit for the tremendous contribution it made to that war.